While you were watching missiles light up the Middle East, a military coup just started in Washington, D.C. Not in some failed state, not in a Hollywood thriller. Right there, on the floor of the United States House of Representatives, a decade Air Force veteran, Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, stood up, held a classified Pentagon folder in her hand, and accused the most powerful military apparatus on Earth of committing treason against the American people. The document she leaked is called Directive 818, and what it contains is so explosive, so fundamentally illegal, that if even half of it is true, the United States government as you know it is already fracturing from the inside. Forget about foreign enemies. The greatest threat to the American Republic right now is wearing stars and bars inside the Pentagon. And today, I am going to walk you through every single detail of what just happened. Before I break down what Directive 818 actually authorizes, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on, because this story is developing by the hour, and if you are not here, you will miss critical updates that no one else is covering. Now, let me show you what they are trying to hide. To understand this bombshell, you need to understand the financial collapse that triggered it. We covered this in a recent video. The US bond market didn't just dip, it cratered. Foreign buyers, led by China and Japan, began dumping US Treasury bonds at a pace not seen since the 2008 financial crisis. The result was catastrophic for the Pentagon. The Department of Defense runs on congressional appropriations funded by Treasury operations. When the bond market collapses, the Treasury cannot raise new capital efficiently. The money pipeline that funds everything from aircraft carrier strike groups in the Persian Gulf to ammunition shipments for ground operations in the Middle East began to dry up almost overnight. The Pentagon was staring at a liquidity crisis. Not a budget debate, not a spending cut, an actual inability to pay for an active, multi-front war. That is when things went completely off the rails. Most people think the military simply follows orders from Congress and the President. In reality, buried deep inside Cold War-era legislation, there exist continuity of government protocols. Emergency powers designed for a scenario where the civilian government is destroyed in a nuclear attack. These protocols were never meant to be activated during a fiscal crisis. They were designed for the absolute end of the world. But according to the document Congresswoman Luna leaked, that is exactly what top Pentagon officials did. They activated a classified continuity directive, Directive 818, and used it to justify the largest unauthorized seizure of civilian assets in modern American history. Stay with me, because what this directive actually authorizes changes the entire game. According to the excerpts read aloud on the House floor, Directive 818 grants specific Pentagon commands the authority to commandeer private sector assets deemed critical to national defense operations. We are not talking about voluntary partnerships or standard defense contracts. We are talking about forced seizure. The directive reportedly authorizes the military to take control of commercial cargo aircraft from private airlines, redirect privately held fuel reserves from domestic energy companies, and seize operational control of civilian satellite communications networks. All of this without a single congressional vote, without a single court order, without a single warrant. The estimated value of assets already commandeered under this directive is believed to be in the tens of billions of dollars. Commercial jets that were supposed to be flying passengers are now running Pentagon logistics. Fuel that was supposed to heat American homes and power American businesses is being funneled directly into the war machine. And private satellite bandwidth, the kind used by every American with a cell phone, is being rerouted for military command and control. Detail matters enormously, and I'm going to show you why in a moment. Congresswoman Luna did not just leak this information and sit down. She escalated. On the House floor, she introduced a privileged resolution, a procedural mechanism that forces an immediate vote to strip funding from the specific Pentagon commands identified in Directive 818. But she publicly called for the arrest of the generals who authorized the directive, accusing them, in her words, of executing a soft military coup against the constitutional authority of the United States Congress. Think about the weight of that accusation. A sitting member of Congress, a military veteran herself, is standing in the people's house and telling the American public that their generals have gone rogue, that the military is no longer answering to the civilian government, that the Pentagon has decided it will fund its own war by its own rules using your assets, and there is nothing the democratic process can do to stop it. And if they can seize a billionaire's satellite network without a warrant, what stops them from taking your property next? This is the question that should terrify every single American watching this, because the legal precedent being set here is not limited to billionaires or defense contractors. If continuity of government protocols can be activated during a fiscal crisis, not a nuclear war, not an invasion, but a bond market crash, then the threshold for seizing civilian assets has just been lowered to essentially nothing. Your car, your home, your bank account. If a Pentagon lawyer can argue that any of it is critical to national defense, Directive 818 as described gives them the legal framework to take it. This is not conspiracy. This is what was read aloud from a classified document on the floor of the House of Representatives. And that changes everything about the relationship between the American citizen and their government. Now let me pivot to the global picture, because the consequences of this domestic civil war extend far beyond Washington. Beijing is watching, Moscow is watching, and what they see is a superpower that is tearing itself apart. For decades, American military power was backstopped by two things: an unshakable economy and a unified chain of command from the civilian government to the battlefield. Both of those pillars are now cracked. The economy is drowning in debt, the bond market is in free fall, and the civilian government is now in open conflict with its own military leadership. For adversaries like China and Russia, this is the strategic green light they have been waiting for. A paralyzed America cannot project credible deterrence. The government cannot even control its own rogue generals. The entire concept of the unified Western alliance is effectively dead on arrival. European allies are reportedly in a state of alarm. NATO planning is built on the assumption of a functional, solvent, and constitutionally governed American military. If that assumption is false, every defense commitment the United States has made, from the Baltic states to the Taiwan Strait, is now in question. Imagine you are a defense minister in Warsaw or Taipei, and you just watched a U.S. Congresswoman accuse the Pentagon of operating a shadow government. You are not sleeping tonight. You are rewriting your entire national security strategy. And here is where it gets even darker. A bankrupt, internally divided America does not just lose deterrence. It creates a power vacuum. And power vacuums on this scale do not stay empty for long. If China calculates that Washington is too consumed by its own constitutional crisis to respond, the window for a move on Taiwan is not closing, it is wide open. If Moscow determines that NATO's backbone, the American military, is now fighting its own Congress instead of projecting power, the pressure on the Baltic states and Eastern Europe intensifies exponentially. The ripple effects on global energy markets, on oil prices, on shipping lanes, on the value of every asset denominated in US dollars, the chain reaction from this single event is incalculable. Mainstream networks are playing looped footage of overseas explosions and running panel debates about troop movements. A United States Air Force veteran just proved on the House floor that the most immediate, existential threat to the American public is not a foreign missile. It is their own bankrupt, desperate Pentagon, operating completely outside the law, seizing civilian assets, and answering to no one. War is not just overseas anymore. The front line has moved to Washington, and the casualties are the Constitution, the rule of law, and the fundamental idea that in America, the military serves the people, not the other way around. This story is far from over. The privileged resolution is forcing a vote. The Pentagon has not issued a public response, and the classified document is now in the hands of multiple congressional committees. The next 72 hours will determine whether civilian authority is restored or whether this becomes the most dangerous constitutional crisis since the Civil War. So here is my question for you, and I want you to be honest in the comments. With the Treasury effectively bankrupt and an active war burning through resources, do you side with the Pentagon seizing civilian assets to keep the war effort alive? Or do you stand with Representative Anna Paulina Luna in stopping what she calls an unconstitutional military power grab, even if it means the war effort collapses? There is no easy answer. Pick your side. Drop it in the comments. I will see you in the next briefing.